大家好，欢迎收看今天的全球瞭望，我是郭崇伦。我们今天要特别邀请和平号的执行委员会的代表川崎哲，跟我们一起来讨论他目前所从事的工作。Today we're going to welcome Mr. Akira Kawasaki to our show and talk about the things he has been engaging in. Welcome, Mr. Kawasaki, to be on the show.
Thank you very much.
To begin with, you mentioned when you are a university student, you went to Iran for a trip. At the time, you have witnessed the after war of Iran-Iraq war and how devastating that war had caused to the society. And you called it a personalized war affairs experience, and that kind of experience had a lasting impression on you. Would you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, it is true that my personal visit to other countries, including Iran and other Middle East area, which I visited just for my curiosity in my university time, had a very great impact for my life for afterwards, because I was just curious to see what the countries are like after war. So the Iran-Iraq war continued for about 8 years, and I was just looking those news in my high school time. But after entering into university, I thought it's a good time to go and visit.
Right.
And it was just for curiosity. But what I experienced there was the very warm hospitality and friendship offered by the local people. Even, even though the difficulties that they are facing because of the destruction or the challenge for rebuilding. And many people saw me, oh hey, Japanese young guys traveling. And they welcomed me just all of a sudden and for lunch, dinner, and some,
You are not feeling a danger in that when you're traveling?
No. I felt I was really secured and warmly welcomed by a foreign visitor. And I couldn't speak Persian language.
Right.
And my English was very, very broken. And those local Iranian people also spoke very broken English, and we could communicate.
Right.
And I really felt that time the people who are living very far away from my life, based in Tokyo, are having very similar and common life, just like me and my family. So I really felt that friendship and common nature of, as a human being. And with all those good memories, after coming back to Japan, in just a few years, a new war began over Iraq. And the same region entering into another devastation, which I felt very, very, it hurt me, myself, because my friends are now being under attack in a broader sense, once again. So I thought I should do something in my country. And that time, the government of Japan was discussing how to help the U.S. to conduct the war, which I thought is not right thing to do. Rather, I thought as a student to do something to stop such a war and stop our government to assist militarily to conduct such a war. And luckily, I found many good friends in the university time around Tokyo, and did some protest, and also the visit to the parliamentarians or visit to the foreign ministry officials and so on. So it was the kind of very first time for me to start political actions regarding peace issues.
And that led to eventually to your peace boat program that you are now is actually running. And what do you think that the peace program would have the similar kind of impact to the younger generation like you had before?
Yeah, the peace boat was created in 1983. That time I was not involved, and I came to peace boat afterwards. But the concept is that to carry people around the world and to make people to see people in different countries serves the very purpose of achieving peace. So that was exactly what I personally experienced in my personal trip to the Middle East in my university time. So by having a great number of Japanese people to visit and see the world would make the people of Japan more peaceful and understand the peace issues more deeply. That was kind of belief that I had for that organization, and also that the Peace Boat organization itself also has been operating in a mission and a slogan that learning from the wars in the past, building a peace in the future.
And in your talk yesterday in Loin Tai Foundation, you also mentioned this. That had made me wondering, because there's a lot of discussion about the war and how the Japanese have been feeling in the war. There is somewhat like a dual identity, I would say. On the one hand, that Japan seemed to be the victimizer. I mean, putting a lot of war trauma to the neighboring countries. But on the other hand, Japan is also the victim of the war because of the nuclear bombs landed on 2 cities, as well as other war casualties. How do you reconcile with those kind of two identity? How do you, as a Japanese, how do you see war, and how do you reflect on the history of that part?
Yeah, I'm fully aware that Japan was both victimizer and victim. And that is why I am, and we as Peace Boat are fully committed to work not to repeat the same mistake. I mean, not to repeat the same mistake of waging war.
Right.
If you wage war, there will be victimizers and victims, and all will be devastated. So I don't want to. I do not want to be misunderstood that those Japanese peace group like Peace Boat is just promoting or spreading the word that Japan as a victim. We are fully aware that the crimes and the atrocity that Japan has committed, and we are really shameful of the fact that some of the top government leaders or political leaders of Japan have not fully admitted those negative facts. I think that's a national shame. And the majority of Japanese people are aware of the both sides of the fact and really committed to keep peace and not to wage war. But that needs to to be accompanied by some action, concrete action. That's why we are running Peace Boat, to learn from those who are affected in wars and convey the message from Japan of the devastation of war. That is why we are working with the survivors of atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on Peace Boat and spreading their words around the world. And this is for the sake of spreading awareness on the humanitarian impact of nuclear weapons and how nuclear weapons damage people and damage humanity, not just Japanese. That's a very important point for our activity.
The history issue is not only something that exists in the past, but I think it's really had an impact in the current affairs. Just see how the quarrel now between Japan and Korea, you can see that. But some people in Japan somehow resented that Japan is being bashed because of this. They felt that they've been unfairly treated, not only by Korea, but also by Chinese, by Taiwanese, so on and so forth. How do you see that? I mean, they are Japanese as well, and there's a growing sentiment that we are being unfairly being treated, and those countries are doing this because their own political motives, so on and so forth. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's really sad to see that those issues and brutal reality of war are being used for political bargain or political deal. Of course, any actions by governments or political leaders have some sort of political agenda. But as a non-governmental peace campaigner and educator, our approach is not using this issue for a political agenda, but also just for the awareness of the importance of peace. So when we look at the situation in Europe, for example, how Germans are really genuinely and continuously admitting the past is something we really have to respect. And I think they are doing so with great pride. And I think Japan should follow that path and keeping apologizes for others will be a fair thing and should be something that we should be proud of for future.
Yesterday, when you mentioned and elaborate on your peaceful program, you mentioned that some of your program you try to bring in the victims or the actual witness on the boats or to visit their ports. You would like to put the actual human face for people to get to know of. Why do you think that is very important to put the human at the center stage of this exchange?
Yeah, so when you learn history through books or internet,
right,
it is said that, hey, Taiwan and Japan, or Japan China, Taiwan China, Japan Korea, those names of countries written as a kind of just like human. And historians sometimes say country A won the war with country B. But what do you mean by saying winning a war? The war itself is really disastrous, and many people were killed or brutally diminished and damaged in all aspects of life. And so, as grassroots-based campaigner and educator, we should forget of those kind of narrative, state-to-state narrative of a war, and keeping our eyes on the real face of war, and for that sake, having the actual person who are victimized or who had to commit crimes, on the ground, and have the real dialogue is really key to achieve this.
But someone also raised it that nowadays, for younger generation, for instance, they are playing video game, or they're playing those kind of things, video games that is very violent, and they have no sense of pain to that degree. And now we are seeing more and more weapons without pilots, without people involved in it, drone or robots. Is that a dangerous trend that we are heading into that will make people don't care about the casualty of the war or the actual experience of the war?
Yeah, right. I see a clear danger in that trend, especially in those video games. The violence is really developed and promoted without a sense of pain. And you can't feel how painful those attacks are. You know? So it's it can lead our society to a situation that wars and violence or even the act of terrorism can be conducted very much carelessly and thoughtlessly. So this phenomena is already becoming an issue in the military areas around the world by having so many armed drones or robotic weapons or even autonomous weapons are being developed. So, and that means that people, human beings, are just trusting machines to fight on their behalf. And those controlling the machines do not feel any pain. And by doing so, the society is more leaning toward and easily conducting wars around the world. So this like a development of automatic, robotic means of warfare needs to be stopped.
Mr. Kawasaki is also a member of international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, and the organization ICAN had just won Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. We're going to talk about how their effort had been in the past and what Mr. Kawasaki is thinking about nuclear weapons after break. 我们等一下回来，我们继续跟川崎哲先生来谈关于废核的相关事情。